We're going to call this meeting in order on the 21st of December 2023 at 6 p.m.
Please quiet.
I'll stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic that stands one nation. We have a roll call.
Matt Truss,
Present.
Donnie Yen,
Present.
Mark Hamilton,
Present.
Brian Morgan,
Present.
Sean
Lear.
Lear, sorry,
Present.
and 2 absent. Also attending is Mike Sanchez, attorney.
For item number 4, for the approval of the previous meeting minutes, we are going to table that currently, as we're still gathering those from the previous meeting. Can I entertain a motion to enter into new business
Motion to enter into new business.
and to open the public hearing for item number 1 on the text amendment to the village's zoning ordinance to permit and regulate the sitting and operation of adult use cannabis business establishments within the village, case number 2023-2. Hamilton.
Motion by Hamilton. Is there a second? Seconded by Donnie Gatz.
All right, the public hearing is open. Okay, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. All opposed?
So, want me to lead off here with what we're doing?
Please.
So first of all, this is a public hearing under the Illinois Municipal Code. Notice of this hearing was provided in the Daily Journal on December the 6th in accordance with the law, and the publication is in the village's file. This is an evidence gathering hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak will be given an opportunity to do so. You will have to do so under oath. We will need your name for the record. Your address is optional, but is helpful. So at this time, anyone who wants to speak, please just want to.
If anybody that wishes to speak on behalf of that public hearing, please stand up. I swear everybody in at once. Raise your right hand. I do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
I do swear.
So, just as a comprehensive, as staff, comprehensive overview, 10,000 foot overview, the ordinance that's being contemplated defines the various types, statutory categories of cannabis business enterprises, or CBEs, and then creates a new chapter in the village's zoning ordinance that sets out the rules for those. And that's in front of each of you. It lastly allows craft growers and dispensaries in the C1 and C2 districts, and cultivation operations, which is the larger scale grow operations in the I2 district. This was put together by staff. It's just a recommendation. If there are any changes that the Plan Commission wishes to recommend, when we get to that point, I'm all ears. So we're going to let.
Gentlemen, with this hand raised.
Would you please mind standing up and speak a little louder so we
Oh.
can hear everything here to start?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Can you turn that furnace off at the back, please?
There's an ordinance that's up here that's for consideration tonight. It defines each of the categories of cannabis business establishment, or CBE. It creates a new chapter in the village's zoning code with all of the rules that are applicable to those entities. And then it allows, as special uses that require a plan commission hearing, the special use permit and an ordinance passed by the village board, dispensaries and craft growers in the C1 and C2 districts, and cultivation operations, which is a larger scale grower in the industrial I2 heavy industry district. This is just a staff recommendation. It's up for consideration. If the plan commission were to make any recommendations for changes, alterations, additions, deletions, those would be taken into effect prior to it going to the village board. And then the village board would have to make the final decision. As I think it's important to note, the plan commission is a recommending body. It's advisory only. Whatever they decide tonight, it will be referred on to the village board for final decision. So unless there's any questions from the commission for me, then I think we can open it up to whoever wants to speak. I don't know that we have an order unless everyone's signed in. So I think maybe we should start with the applicants, so to speak, let them put their piece and then just take people's.
I'm gonna stand over here so I can kind of make sure everyone can hear me. So I'm Nick Standiford. I'm a zoning attorney out of Chicago. I've done a few of these cannabis dispensaries, and I think that's why Cannabistro LLC hired me to try to guide them through this process. When I first got the file, I looked at the code and I saw that there wasn't any regulation relating to adult use cannabis. All there was in Grant Park was medical cannabis, and there were regulations passed for medical cannabis. So I did see that there was a referendum that was passed that the people who voted did want to see it, the cannabis dispensary in town. And so that's, I think, why that ordinance was drafted. The ordinance in front of the ZBA today follows most of the contours of the medical ordinance that was already passed by Grant Park. It's got a lot of restrictions as to what the dispensaries can do. It talks about securities and cameras and guards and things like that to make sure it's a safe facility. It makes sure that, I think it makes sure that this is going to be compliant with the state law for cannabis dispensaries, which is more strict than the Grant Parks. It's one of the most strict laws you can have is one of these cannabis dispensaries. They have to be inspected by the state. They have to be in order to open, and they have to be very safe. So you'll see the regulations in here about that. What else? I was thinking about maybe just giving an overview of the regulations, but the reason we need this ordinance to pass is to have the cannabis dispensary that we're also here for a public hearing tonight for a special use application. So we would like, as the applicant, and the applicant is Fred Hub back there. Fred, you want to raise your hand? Fred's the applicant for the special use permit. You might know him. He runs a funeral home here in town. And he is the only property that the special use is going to be applying for. Sorry, the horn's distracting me a little bit. But I guess the reason we need the ordinance to pass is so that we can apply for this special use permit. So the hearing tonight will have both this ordinance for adult use cannabis, and it will have the special use for the specific location that we're looking to cite the cannabis dispensary. So if there's any questions about the cannabis dispensary, that proposed operation, we're happy to answer that in the next part or in this part, whatever the zoning board prefers. We ask that we think that the ordinance that was put together is comprehensive and good, and we can work within its parameters. And so we would ask that it be recommended for approval by the zoning board. And then after this hearing, we know that it goes back to the village board for final approval. So we'd ask that this be recommended for approval. Thank you.
And just to touch into something that he said, there's actually going to be 2 hearings tonight. They're going to be parallel. They're going to follow the same structure, start the same way, end the same way. The first one is just the ordinance to amend the code, to change the code, to add these new provisions into it. The second hearing is on the question of whether or not to allow a dispensary at the particular property they're asking for, which is the old bank building over on Route 1. So this is just the ordinance. The specific location of the dispensary comes second.
Somebody else wants to?
Thanks.
Next, Don Kalen, you want to stand up and speak?
Yeah, so I didn't realize that there were 2 different hearings, so I have more on the specific location that's being recommended. Do you want me to hold off, or do you want me to speak at this time?
I think it would be appropriate to address, if you've got questions or concerns about, or suggestions about the ordinance allowing it, those would be appropriate now. Concerns about the location would be more appropriate.
Sure, I can speak on both, so I will.
Okay.
I'm John Taylor, I'm the superintendent of Grant Park School District. I've been here 13 years. I've been asked this question, do I have a moral opinion on a marijuana dispensary? And the answer is no. I really don't care. It's legalized. The concern I have and that does tie in with the location, which I'll speak about later, is the perceptual. Our district has worked very, very hard to get new families to come into a school district. And when you're a school district, just like for the community itself, that school district is dependent on the number of children that you serve each and every day. So the dispensary itself, I don't object to necessarily. However, the fact that it's a perceptual reality of when you enter our town or wherever that, they are talking about allowing it into a village. I don't know if the committee has done the research. I have not done full research on it. However, I can't find similar towns like Grant Park. I found Decatur, I found St. Louis, I found where they're located. I'm sure there are some, but I believe we would be one of the smallest villages with a dispensary at this time. So that is my objection to sending the ordinance to allow it in the Grant Park proper. I don't believe that when it was passed at the time, with the trustees that I talked to that were on at that time, that was the original intent. I understand things change. I respect the work that you do, and I appreciate that, but that is my opinion on the ordinance coming in to the village property. And then I'll speak on the exact location when I'm allowed to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I also have Linda Root.
Writer
Okay, was yours on location or the special permit?
on location.
Okay, you wanna wait? Okay. Is everyone that signed in on location? Okay, we will wait for that.
Then we'll generally ask if anyone else wants to talk about the ordinance.
Is there anyone else in the audience that?
Mr. Chairman, why don't you put the other meeting before this, because if the zoning doesn't pass, there's no sense of us speaking in favor if it's not gonna happen. If the zoning don't pass, it's not gonna happen anyway, right? So do the zoning first.
I can answer that question. The granting of a special use permit to authorize this particular use, the cannabis dispensary at a particular location, requires that it be permitted by the code first. So if this ordinance that would create the use as an available use, put the rules for it in place, if that doesn't pass, then there's no use to grant. So even regardless of what the recommendations from this body may be tonight, any recommendation of approval on the special use permit is contingent upon the village board first adopting the ordinance to make it available in the first place. So we're taking it in that order because that's kind of the chicken and egg order of it.
Is this board gonna vote tonight?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
I feel like my comments could maybe apply to either one, so I'll just go ahead and speak now, if that's all right. I actually have a written statement that I'm just gonna read from. My name is Kim Stanton.
I'm sorry, ma'am, would you mind spelling that just for the record?
SCANLAN. When I moved to Grant Park 30 years ago, it was to flee from an area in decline and to find a safe, quiet, comfortable place to raise a family. A small town with traditional small town values. Over the years, Grant Park has stayed small, and that was okay with me because I saw what was happening in other towns. I watched the town that I grew up in go from being a governor's hometown award recipient to being a dangerous place to steer clear of. For the first time in 30 years, we have really started to see a resurgence of interest in our town and have benefited from a corresponding interest in home sales, increase in home sales and property values. I believe this is due to a renewed interest in small town life and values, and is also due in no small part to the accolades received by the Grant Park School. Every real estate listing highlights those awards as a reason for families, for those looking to start families, to choose Grant Park over other towns as a place to call home. Low crime rates and award-winning schools are major considerations for prospective home buyers. This renewed interest in small town life and small town values has been cause for renewed excitement for our town. There has been an influx of new families willing to take on the work of fixing and restoring our town's older homes to make them shine again. This was also This was also has also provided the village with an opportunity to embrace its small town identity and to encourage businesses that are compatible with that identity. I submit that the proposed dispensary flies in the face of that identity. It does not represent a family-centered town. It's a business geared towards exploiting and profiting off of people's weaknesses and ills. The proposed location of the dispensary would not only violate the current zoning ordinance put in place for a reason, but because of its location at the very entryway to town, would become the face of the town. The first thing people would see when arriving in Grant Park. The impression it would create in visitors' minds could be one of concern, not one of appreciation and pride. A concern about crime would not be unfounded. Studies have shown that dispensaries are often targets of crime, either by customers or by others, due to their primarily cash business. A concern about the potential widespread drug use of residents could also have a chilling effect on the renewed interest in our town, and in effect could act to undo the resurgence of interest and increase in property values. I hope that the village administration will think hard about how this business will affect all of Grant Park residents, not just those who would be potential customers, and how it would reflect on the image of the town. The decisions that you make will impact this town, not just for now, but for long after you are gone from your positions. I hope that I won't find myself fleeing from this town. What may look like easy money may not be the right decision. Be selective. We aren't desperate. I ask that you resist the urge to put money, aim higher. We can do better and we deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any?
And I would just note, ma'am, that letter, if you wanted it to apply to both, you're welcome to read it again during the second hearing, or you could incorporate your comments. We're recording everything, so we'll have that available as well. Okay.
Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak in behalf of the rezoning ordinance? No?
Okay, then at this point, I would give the applicant an opportunity to respond.
The rezoning ordinance is to allow the dispensary, right?
There is a text amendment, a rezoning ordinance is changed to the map. There's no change to the map. There's a change to the text of the ordinance. We're gonna add new words into it, change words around, that kind of thing. That's called a text amendment. And then there's gonna be a special use permit. The text amendment changes the ordinance to have these rules in it, adds to it legislatively. The special use permit will say you can have this business at this location.
Okay, I just thought that you would have had this all taken care of before this other meeting tonight. I thought this was
It's all
all
a part of
about
it.
the zoning.
It's all a part of it.
And to your question, it seems that the question is, why didn't the plan commission consider changing the ordinance first and then come back at a later time for the special use permit? And the answer is, the applicant, the change to the code coming up at this time, where it didn't after the referendum was passed, is being spurred on by the request for a special use permit. And that's a normal process, to take them kind of concurrently or at the same time in an effort to get it through with kind of minimal disruption as far as convening multiple hearings, making people come out twice if they're for or against something. So there's an efficiency aspect to it.
Well, I really didn't do my homework that good on this ordinance because I didn't know we were talking about this tonight. But from prior administrations, that's been a problem. That was bad zoning from the get-go. They had a problem with the dollar store, if you remember that. So what happened in the past, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, is still a problem today. I wish somebody would have corrected it by now. You know, the bank building's commercial. Or does this special zoning only have to deal with pot?
It's a special use permit specifically for a cannabis dispensary. Just like you would need a special permit from the village to open up a car dealership, or I'm trying to think what are other special. There's a list of uses that are called permitted uses that if you're in the correct district, You can do it anytime you want. There are other uses called special uses that you need to get a permit and ordinance from the village board, even if you're in the right district. So right now, the second hearing we're gonna have tonight is whether or not to grant that permit for this particular property.
Okay, was there a problem with the zoning when it was operating as a bank?
No, no, sir. Not that I'm aware of. No, I should caveat that. I suppose.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you just explain for the audience here what? the
Excuse me,
change-
ma'am. I can't really hear you. Can
Can
you?
you explain for the audience what the change is, what the verbiage is that's changing from and to?
Yes, and I've got some extra copies up here if anyone wants to look at them. We're basically, the zoning code is broken up into a series of chapters that handle different topics. We're gonna add definitions for cannabis uses as proposed, assuming that this were to be approved. It adds definitions that are consistent with the statute, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which is what legalized marijuana in the state. It then creates a new chapter that has a series of rules specific for cannabis businesses. What they can do, what they can't do, their hours of operation, where they can locate or co-locate, all those sorts of things. Then on top of it, the current ordinance has different chapters, sections for each of the different districts. You have your R or residential districts, you have your C or commercial districts, and you have your I industrial districts. Each district has a list of uses that are permitted as a right and a list of uses that are special. This ordinance, when special, really just means it's allowed, but only with prior approval of the village board after hearing in front of the plan commission with public input. This ordinance would make 3 of the, I think, 5 cannabis uses, the dispensary, the craft grower, and the cultivation center. It would make those special uses in the commercial district, or C1 and C2 for the dispensary and craft grower, and the cultivation center, I'm using that's the wrong word, but in the I district. So that's what's on the table right now for consideration.
Thank you.
Well,
Can we open the discussion up amongst these?
we gotta close it here first.
Is there anybody that's,
You keep talking about these different categories. It's not gonna be, they're not gonna cultivate there. It's just gonna be a dispensary.
That's right. They're asking for a permit for specifically a dispensary at that specific location. This is the overarching set, this is the rule book. We're writing the rule book right now. They're gonna ask for something out of the rule book later, but right now we're just putting the rules in place.
this,
Or that's what we're proposing, I should say.
this document is going to go anywhere in the village that if it's approved, or anywhere in the village that would be in the rule set that they're going to allow. So 2 years from now, if somebody comes up, we were not gonna have to go back through this. This is adjusting and amending that zoning, whether it's approved and or denied. That's setting that place before we get to the special use permit. Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Yes, could I ask?
Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
Is this a privately owned business? Or a federal or state or what is?
You can ask.
We're gonna give them an opportunity to respond to questions, and I think they can answer that question for you. For the record, ma'am, what is your name?
June Sport?
Okay, did you get that?
And is this for, I'm not up to this cannabis thing, but is this medical?
This would authorize adult use recreational dispensaries and the like. The village already has rules in place that permit medical, I believe the statute was the Compassionate Use of Cannabis Act. That regulatory schema for medical cannabis is already allowed as a special use permit, though I forget which district.
So outsiders could come into this dispensary and just buy any type of narcotic or drug?
Only cannabis. They're only permitted to sell cannabis at these dispensaries.
They're only permitted to what?
To sell cannabis. They can't sell other narcotics as far as I'm aware. at a dispensary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
You said zoning in Grant Park, does that mean that it's going to be changing the distance? It can be from like a residential, because that's on Hilton Court. I know this location more than
Yeah,
whatever, but are you talking about changing the Illinois zoning,
well,
which is
first,
500 feet?
what is your name for the record?
Linda, I'm sorry, Linda Ryder.
This would create, well, you're kind of asking two questions. We're not changing what the minimum distance rules are. There are no statutory minimum distance rules. That is the kind of topic that the Plan Commission is free to take up this evening, but that is not currently proposed. Actually, that's not entirely true. There is a requirement that these facilities be more than 1,000 feet away from any public or private nursery school, preschool, primary, secondary school, daycare center, daycare home, residential care home, a residential care home, but that doesn't include vocational and trade schools. So there is a minimum distance provision built in for schools, but that's all that's proposed as this is presented.
Any other questions? I'll turn it back over to them.
Yeah, let them respond. Got an answer.
I think I'll respond when we talk about the special use permit for expediency purposes.
Okay,
That's okay.
yeah.
Because I think those comments were mostly special use comments.
Yeah, in the back, some of the questions that were raised about the specific business and the specific location, the applicant is going to address, but when we're talking about the specific location and the business. So unless anyone has an objection to that. Okay, then so at this point, if the plan commissioners have any questions for them, for me, for the public, now is the time. Otherwise, we can close and you can deliberate.
Are we done with public comment?
Not yet. Do you have something to add?
I got something to read. You want to do something else, or are we still on public comment?
Sure, by all means.
Can anybody hear me? If I agree with you 100%, I would like to go back to the 30s when the train stopped here. We got all our supplies at the depot. But the taxes are going up. Everybody's asking for money.
Excuse me, sir, before you get into it, can we have your name for the record?
Thomas Peterson.
You got it.
Tom Peter, so. Go ahead, sir. Yeah, go
Good
ahead.
evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the board for giving me some time to speak. I'm speaking in favor of this facility to benefit the taxpayers of Grant Park. Basically, the money spent in this facility will generate a use tax to provide a wide range of services for the village. Maybe a percentage of this money could be used for a new police station. Maybe they could start buying some stone to fill in the holes. Maybe they could get a new PA system. Springfield took this off the table. They legalized it. And the state is making money hand over fist. With this legalization, January of 23, they made over 100, the state has made over 127 million. And they're not just handing it out to small towns like Grant Park. There is not going to be amateurs working in these facilities. This is a legitimate company that has been vetted and licensed by the state. Some people think that marijuana is so terrible and deadly, you'll never OD from smoking it. You might pass out, but you won't OD. It'll never kill your innards like booze will. Some people say that smoking tobacco is harder on your body than pot. But Grant Park allows booze and tobacco to be sold in its village. If the dispensary is open up and the people that do not want it here, they don't have to go there. If you don't like a bar in town, you don't go there. As we speak, there is people driving through or from Indiana with money in their pocket, going to Kankakee to buy their weed. Kankakee or Bradley. This facility should have opened up 3 years ago. Some people think gangbangers are gonna come to Grant Park and rob the people here. These are blue collar workers just trying to wind down after working their ass off every day. Getting back to the gangbangers, I've never heard of any of them in Lowell, Indiana. The gangbangers usually stay with other gangbangers in Kankakee because they feel safer in their own hood. The gangbangers buy their pot from other gangbangers. They don't come to a dispensary. The state's dispensaries have their own security people. The village board and the school district is already asking for more money. By not allowing this facility is to ease the pain of the taxpayers is just like a farmer saying he doesn't want it to rain in the middle of a drought. It just doesn't make any sense. If you think that weed is so terrible, just ask the cancer patient that is on chemo how he felt like before he had it. Let's take the blinders off and bring Grant Park into the 21st century. The small town pride is beautiful, but the taxes just keep going up. Those do not stop. There's some people that are worse off than the people in this room. They have to decide between buying food and paying their electric bill. They don't need any additional taxes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak?
Can you make a comment or you have to speak?
As long as you give us your name, you're good to go.
Bob Robiero. Right? You wanna put the store in here, fine. If you decide not to put it in here, fine. I don't care. But when you come up and you say that because of that store, Grant Park is gonna prosper because of the tax they're gonna receive. Illinois is a disaster right now. People are fleeing this state every week. Putting that store over there is not gonna help Grant Park or this community. That money's going to the state. Those politicians in Chicago are gonna blow it. And we're not gonna receive a damn thing for it.
5%.
The
It's
truck
better.
stop was supposed to send 20%. Since the truck stop's been in, what improvements have been made in Grant Park? Drive up and down the street, right? The street's a disaster with the stores. Drive up and down the street over there where Village Hall is. That's a disaster. You wanna keep the money here from the sales? Then call the politicians in Springfield and say that money stays here for the taxes that are collected. See what they tell you. You know what they're gonna tell you? Take a hike. You wanna put the store in? Put it in, but be realistic. You know, you got a lot of stupid people listening to those comments.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, any questions from the plan commission for me, for the public, the applicant? No.
I do. So one of the things that I'd like to bring up is, the applicant is you talk about the expected, percentage. But can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so, thank you for the question. The municipality has passed a tax, 3% on cannabis sales. And the applicant is expecting to generate 10 million in the first year. And that would be 300,000 in taxes to the village, based on the village's 3% tax. I just want to make sure that was clear. It's not the state getting the 3% tax, that's the village of Grant Park, that's their tax. Under the already passed ordinance, not this ordinance, it was already passed. And, so in year 5, they're projected to make 17 million. And that would be about $500,000 to the village. And that could, I think the comments is Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
The comments about, helping police, you could hire more police officers, you could fill the potholes better. I'm sure the village could use that extra money. And that's the village's money if the place is successful. And, as Mr. Peterson said, that this is a prime location for, Indiana residents who may want to purchase product. And I think the fact that it is a small town, there aren't many small towns with dispensaries. I'm from Michigan originally. I know when up there it's less regulated. And so there's dispensaries in tons of small little towns all over the state. And you can go in and they're not very nice. But in Illinois, there's not very many dispensaries and they're very regulated. And they're a lot like banks, and the building here we're talking about is a former bank. So it's a good fit. So these are really nice facilities that have a high amount of tax that a lot of the villages like them and want them because they get that tax. And as Mr. Stern will talk about later, there are not a lot of headaches for police. They're secure facilities. So that's how I'll answer that one. Unless you want me to
My
elaborate.
only question with that is how are you coming up with that $10 million projection?
They had a report run for them by a third party, and that's how they came up with that figure.
Okay.
I think it's 160 folks a day they're expecting to come there. So that's throughout the whole day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question I had, I think is gonna be more for probably the village. Looking through this ordinance, I see that it lists out the facility may not be located within 1,000 feet of the property line, and it lists out schools, nurseries, daycare homes, residential. Is there an opportunity that we can add additional items to that? As an example, a distance to include parks or a specific distance to a residentially zoned either R1 or R2 location where there has to be so much distance between the property line and that zoning of R1 and R2. Is that an opportunity to include into that ordinance?
That is within the village's power statutorily, and if the plan commission's pleasure was to recommend that be inserted, we would put that in there and put it in front of the village board. Ultimately, the village board would decide whether or not to include it. Okay.
Have any questions?
Then
Make a motion to close the public hearing for the text amendment to the village's zoning ordinance to permit.
Can I ask one more question, please?
Go ahead.
The gentleman that was from Michigan that owns the stores already, that was just speaking. Would he repeat how many cars a day would visit that location? What did he say?
160.
He said 160 cars a day. Gonna go into that location? Okay. Who's gonna pay for the traffic light on that corner?
The lights been out over there, the street lights been out for like 5 years, okay? Now, 160 cars are gonna come in there. Take the hours it's open, divide it into 160. Are those people gonna park at Casey's? Are they gonna park on Route 1? There's no parking there. How many cars can you get in that parking lot? 5, 6, 7? Where are these cars gonna park? Are they gonna come in and go out on Route 1? Or are they gonna go down Hilger towards the park where the kids are playing? And then go west through town? Hey, I think this is a great idea, 160, I live right there. I'm gonna open up a hot dog stand, the hell with anything. Right, 160 cars are gonna go in there every day.
There'll be plenty of room in that parking lot. They're only there 20 minutes. They're not gonna sit there all day.
Yeah, can I respond real quick? So I misspoke and I apologize. There's 120, there's 120 people a day they expect to be there. They brought it out to about 60 people an hour. Okay, and there's 15 spots on site. There's 10 spots you can put underneath the awning there where you have the drive-through. And then there's more room. This is a big property. There's more room to do paving in the back if necessary, if there's that much demand. But as Mr. Peterson said, people aren't loitering in the dispensary. You get in there to get your product and you leave. You don't consume your product on the site. People aren't staying for a long period of time. They're in and out like they're in and out of Casey's, which does sell alcohol, and it's the same distance from the park. Thank you.
There's online ordering where they usually just.
And there's online ordering as well for this country, so it's quick enough to process.
What are the hours of operation?
So can you, first of all, can we get your name and then what was the question?
My name is Chris Natino.
Okay,
What are the hours of operation?
So the hours of operation are proposed, they're just proposed, it's whatever the board wants to do, but we wanted as much flexibility as possible. We asked for 6 a.m. so we get our employees in there, get the site ready, and then 10 p.m. to close it down and get out of there. So those would be that'd be the parameters of when that people could be in the dispensary. I don't know what the public hours would be, but we just want, these are the same hours that I asked for a dispensary in Waukegan. And they found that it was okay. So the hours are a factor under the proposed new ordinance that the board can decide.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing on the text amendment to the village's zoning ordinance to permit and regulate the sitting of operation of adult use cannabis business establishments within the village?
Motion opposed.
Motion by Lear.
Second.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion passed.
hearing closes, 6:43 p.m. So at this point, the members of the commission are free to discuss, comment on the evidence that's been received, and then at whatever point the plan commission feels that you've had your discussion, we're looking for a motion. This is the next item on the agenda, a motion to recommend either approval or denial. And because it's a text amendment, the standard is really just, is it in the best interest of the village? Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? Is it an appropriate use of the zoning power?
And this is more just changing the complete zone.
Yes, once we're finished with this,
Sorry.
then we would look at the dispensary on the particular
Right,
right.
so I mean, like industry, you could actually go into the industry and try and get a grow operation.
Yeah, somebody would still need to come in, they'd have to make an application, have a public hearing, get a plan, or a special use permit from the village board. But this would give them a pathway, right?
One of the,
Making sure.
one of the things, the reason I brought up the distance for parks and residential is I just want to bring to light to the board that currently on the map, just north of Love's Truck Stop.
Yeah.
At a diagonal northwest angle. Picture going from Love's Truck Stop to 9,000 in the railroad tracks has been rezoned a number of years ago to an industrial park, which means that in this zoning ordinance, in addition to that, a developer could come in and put a grow facility right on top of a park and a residential neighborhood, which would be authorized in that zoning ordinance. So it's more than just a dispensary we have to consider. It's also in the hindsight of that somebody, we also would be potentially changing the zoning to include an industrial park, which already is zoned today in the I-1, I-2, if I'm correct, in that respective area.
And then the other spots that are high are obviously heavy industry, which would be the granary. And I don't think active is. I think they're C2.
No, I believe they have to be I-1
I can't remember.
if it was done correctly.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it was.
Yeah, that's true.
We're doing our best.
That's the only thing I would add, that comment is that
Maybe make sure I'm understanding. Are you suggesting placing a minimum distance just on the cultivation centers or on all of them?
personally, I'm making a recommendation. And I'm not making a motion, I'm making a recommendation to the board that if we do consider that there be a recommendation of the village board to add a minimum distance incorporated in what's currently listed out here of 1,000 feet to residential properties, in addition to parks within the village limits of Grant Park.
And that would be on all CBEs, not just on,
Correct.
okay, so if that's the plan commission's pleasure, then we would need a motion to recommend approval, subject to the inclusion of a 1,000 foot.
I'll recommend.
Do I get a chance to respond to that? Because that would eliminate our project.
Well, we're gonna have to, this is a recommendation to the village board. That's a point you're gonna have to make to the village board.
Okay, that ordinance, if that was the restriction, you would not be allowed to apply for special use
I understand.
and have a dispensary. Okay,
If that's the plan commission's pleasure, then it's entirely up to the plan commission what they're recommending. You can recommend to approve it as it is. You can recommend to approve it with that change, with some other change, a shorter distance, a longer distance, it's entirely up to you.
Because it would be the resident.
Yeah, I would say to add into, I'm just looking right now at 9-21-4, the proposal. On item A, which outlines the 1,000 feet to schools, daycares, residential care homes. To include residential properties and parks.
And that's to the property line, not to the structure line.
I would say property line. Yeah. I think that remains consistent with the verbiage here.
Okay? And you would want that, but just to be clear, because 921-4A only applies to craft growers, you would want to insert that into the A provision of each subsequent
Correct.
section for each CBE.
Correct.
Okay. Then if that's the plan commission's pleasure, I need a motion to recommend approval, subject to that modification. And as noted previously, this is just a recommendation. It's up to the village board. They can choose to approve it with or without the modification, make modifications of their own at the village board. So if you feel strongly one way or the other, I would encourage you to go to the village board meeting on January the 2nd, where this will be presented. Well, we have a motion.
Right, I need to.
Yeah.
Is there a motion on the floor by the board to either approve based on the discussion and or to deny?
That's on your discussion, right?
Yes.
I agree.
So
I'm with you.
a motion to recommend approval, subject to the inclusion of 1,000 foot
Yes.
barrier language for parks and residential properties for all cannabis business enterprises. Okay.
Is there a second?
Roll call
Hold on, sorry.
vote, sorry.
Mark,
This is just for the 1,000 feet, can I do that?
Tommy, sorry. And, Brad, yes, okay.
Then that will be prepared and that will be presented to the village board soon.
And how'd that vote turn out?
5 ayes,
Unanimously approved?
recommendation of approval was unanimous. Subject to a change to include the distance between cannabis and residential and parks.
And parks.
Yep. Okay,
Could I ask for a motion to reconsider because, the special use that we're applying for next, we wouldn't be able to apply for because the particular location we have is adjacent to residential subdivision and it's within 500, it's actually 500 feet, but it's within 1,000 feet of the park. So that means that
It's actually 724 feet to the park.
it's 500 feet from the park, from the property line. So with those setback restrictions, the location that we're proposing could not be approved under even with a special use permit.
Only if the board accepts the recommendation. This
Okay.
is the zoning board. My board still has to accept their recommendation.
Yeah.
Which is possible to not or do.
well, but procedurally, he's asked for a motion to reconsider. A motion to reconsider would be a motion by someone who voted in favor of the last instance to reconsider and vote on it a second time. Is there a motion to reconsider?
And the rationale behind my request is that there's not many C and C2 properties in town. And the further you get closer to downtown, the closer you get to the schools. And the closer you get to the schools means that you're probably not gonna have any dispensary in town if it's not near the location that this one is proposed at. So that's the reason that I request reconsideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
A motion to reconsider would have to be to reconsider and recommend approval without the modification. If there is a motion. Okay. Is that motion agenda?
Next item on the agenda is to make a motion to open the public hearing for application for a special use permit to authorize establishment of an adult use cannabis dispensing organization at the property of 101 North Hilgert Drive by Cannabistro LLC, case number 2023-3. We have a motion to open that public hearing. Motion by Hamilton, second. Second by Lear, all in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, some initial preparatory materials. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Daily Journal on December the 6th. I have approved a publication here. It is in the village's file. In addition, the applicant has submitted a proof of service indicating that they have complied with all statutory and village ordinances with regards to deliver or service of notice on surrounding landowners. The ordinance or the village requires mailed notice to all property owners within 150 feet of the property in question, and that is also in the file. This request is for a special use permit. The special use permit would authorize a cannabis dispensary at the old bank building, which is, I'm sorry, commonly known as,
101 North Hilgert Drive.
thank you, 101 North Hilgert Drive, Grand Park, Illinois, bearing pin 01-04-20-300-029. Regardless of the Plan Commission's recommendation tonight, the approval of this special use permit by the village board is contingent upon the village board adopting the ordinance that was passed on earlier in a state that would permit this use at this location. So with that, if you want to swear in anyone who wants to speak.
Anyone wishing to speak on behalf of the special use permit, please stand. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Thank you.
Okay. First one. First up, the applicant.
Either one of you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Nick Standiford. Here with me is Fred Hub. Fred and his brother Jim are the owners of the property for trust. And Fred's dad actually started the funeral home business 40 years ago here in town.
Oh, we've been in business 82 years.
82 years, all right. Twice as long. At that location,
Oh, no, he started in Chicago,
but 40 years here in Grant Park.
45 years.
45 years. And you bought this property at auction
Yes,
from the bank, or from the bank that was there, correct?
yes,
And the bank that was there tried to sell it to several different people, different entities, correct?
correct.
Domino's, I think Marcos, there's a lot of other people that were trying to get contacted, they have interest in the property, right? But you ended up purchasing it at auction.
Yeah,
And the idea for the purchase is this would be a great place for a cannabis dispensary, right?
we were, the options, we knew it was a wonderful location. But it's actually kind of wound into this cannabis thing because of the location. We like it because we can picture, we spend a lot of time in Indiana too. For whatever reason, it seems like all the Illinois people are coming to Indiana, but we can visualize all the people coming. There is no cannabis thing in Indiana. So they're gonna come on that 17th to Grant Park. They're gonna buy their product, they're gonna go right back where they came from. It will help the businesses near us, like Dollar General. We know they're gonna get a lot of business. Even some of our restaurants that could use some business in town. A lot of them are vacant when you go in those restaurants. The only one there is the cook. I mean, how do you run a business? No business. This tax thing is Mr. Peterson, he hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of these older people, because we deal with old people, I'm 80 years old myself. They're struggling here in town. They may not act like it, but they're struggling here. Financially, these taxes keep going up higher and higher. There's nothing to offset with taxes, there's no business here. Maybe I'm wrong, tell me to get lost, but there's nothing here to generate taxes. For the police department, the fire department, all of that's money we pay. I don't know if these old people on a fixed income can keep paying these taxes. The taxes on this bank building are $30,000 a year sitting empty. That's kind of a funny thing. There's no money out of there. We have Bitwood who does the lawn there. I pay that every month. You got the phone, the insurance and everything, costs a lot of money. But we want something in it that's gonna generate a lot of money for the town. We can't think of anything that could come up with that kind of money. If anybody has any ideas, I'm open to hear it.
So your brother is part of the business, Jim Hub, correct?
Well, he's got the financial backing to do this.
So the question is, who is this, who's Cannabistro? And we wanted to make sure that everyone knew that Cannabistro had the financial backing to be successful. Fred's brother Jim, started Motorworks in Barrington, where I bought my car. Huge, massive facility that he had 600 employees at one time, so very successful guy. So he's part of this group that bought this license, is buying this license. They have John Stern, who's a lawyer for, I think he said 35 years. Then we have Andy Stern, his son, who's our security officer, who has a background in law enforcement. He'll come up and talk in a second. Then we have Rich Costa, who's a business owner, who will be the at the site person who will make sure that everything's going okay business-wise. So that's the team. They're not all here tonight. I know Rich had to be in New York. And so with his mom, but Fred's local, Andy's not too far away. And so, people want to see this succeed and they have the money to do it. And they have the property to do it. And the property obviously has a lot of benefits. It's very, as someone mentioned, it's very visible. It's right when you come into town, you see it. And right now it's vacant and it's got a sign that's falling apart. And if you look in the packet, they're proposing a whole new electronic sign that's gonna show, birthdays, Amber Alerts, community-focused things to show that the dispensary is not just a money driver, it's also trying to be part of the community. And it's gonna have this two-sided sign, it's gonna look nice, gonna be in keeping with the area, it's gonna welcome people to town. And it's gonna generate revenue as a result. So that's gonna be a big improvement. And, the site's been vacant for 6 years now, I believe, about 6 years. So to get it activated will, like Fred said, Fred Jr., right? Will lift a lot of businesses in town.
No, our plan, because I'm with my brother, I talk to Hawaii all the time, lives in Hawaii. His plan, and I'm telling you honest, I'm telling you exactly the truth. Our plan is if this gets approved and it starts generating this kind of money, we're gonna deed over that bank building to the village for the new police station and the jail. And we're gonna find another location, maybe in a more pleasing spot for this new dispensary. That's our plan. We don't really want it to stay at that location. We want it temporarily to see if it'll take off there. And if it does, we're gonna give that building to the village for the police station.
So another thing we should mention is jobs. People, jobs are important. There's 10 full-time jobs that we put in our application. We would fill. I think when I talked to Jim today, he said you could get 5 more part-time people. And then I know that police, these are run by trained security, and there might be an opportunity to actually hire Grant Park Police to be on part-time and off-duty officers, kind of be there to local people to monitor the dispensary. And that would be synergistic relationship. There's, I already mentioned that. There's gotta be 2 security guards on time at the site at all times. You have these employees come to the site. They're gonna eat pizza over at Casey's. They're gonna go buy retail at the dollar store. They're gonna be downtown here in Grant Park, hopefully on their lunch break. So those jobs will come here to Grant Park. I think, I was gonna bring up Andy to talk about security. So, he's talk about your background in law enforcement, how you got involved.
Hi, like Nick said, my name is Andy Stern. I've been in law enforcement for the last 10 years, and I think it's important to, I have 3 young kids, and I know there's concerns about family and everything. And when Illinois first decriminalized cannabis, like 4 years ago now, everyone, my police department and all around us, we all cringed. We thought this was gonna be horrible, and that we were gonna have all sorts of problems with it. We've now had a dispensary in my town and surrounding towns for several years. And I can tell you that I can count on one hand, the amount of times we've gotten alarms there. And what it is, it's somebody there unloading product in the morning and just sets off the alarm accidentally. We have no issues with any sort of people, any criminal aspect, anyone coming in and trying to steal these, because I think touch on it. We're putting this in an old bank building because it's really secure. These are really secure facilities, and that's intentional because it's a very serious product and we don't want to get into anyone's hands. So all this stuff is in a secure restricted access area in the back during the day. So only employees are going back there and actually getting it. They're getting one person's order, bringing it forward, giving it to them, and they're walking out with it. At night, everything is taken off and put into a big bank vault in there. So everything is very, very well secured. Electronic locks on all the doors. We're going to have backup generator in there too, so if the power goes out, we're not going to have any issues with that. There are security cameras covering the entire inside. Security cameras covering the parking lot too. We're getting license plate. We're getting pictures of people's faces as we're coming in. It's restricted access as you go in. There's a vestibule that you have to go into. You have to show an identification card, showing you're at least 21 years of age. Even if I wanted to go in there with my young kids, I couldn't take them in there. It is only me going into that building. You can't take kids in there. No risk for it. And I'm sorry. They're very, very secure things. We're going to have, like I said, security cameras covering everything. Those have to be monitored 24/7 too. There's going to be security alarms, the security system around the entire thing is monitored by an external agency. I'll also be monitoring that as well. And like they touched on, we're going to have 2 security guards there at all times. Our goal is to try and use.
Does that include when you're closed? Security guards will also be there?
We're not gonna have two there overnight, like I said,
Not
everything,
at all.
all times we're open. I'm sorry, yes, I misspoke. I'm being frank. So at all times that we're open, and there's gonna be easy access to everything, easier access, because it will be out in the restricted access area. There will always be security guards there, and people coming in the building to monitor those people and make sure that there's safety, going on with that. And then, like I said, everything is going to vault at night. We haven't touched on the need to have security overnight, because like I said, it's really not a problem. Nobody tries breaking into these around here. We were all worried about it. We also all assumed that was gonna be the issue, and it really hasn't been. I'd like to point out too, someone touched on the small town values, and I understand that. And this is one license that was granted for all of Kankakee County. So there's not gonna be a lot of these around, so it is gonna be a big revenue generator, and that's our goal. Like Fred said, feeding this to the town down the road. The village has a $450,000 operating budget for the police department. If we can bring in an extra $300,000 in revenue a year, that's a huge boon to your economy, and that is a really good thing for you. It allows you to fix the holes in the road, like I heard, get home more police officers, and really, truly create more of a reason to bring people to the town. We're bettering things for people to come here, and that's all we're trying to do, is try and make a business that'll be sustainable for the town and help out for everyone here.
And then I think, with that, we'll take any questions, and respond, reserve our time to respond as well.
Is there anybody that would like to directly speak on behalf of the special use permit at this time?
I will, if we're not gonna start with the list, I can go first.
What was your name, sir?
My name is John Corsi,
How do you spell the last name? I'm sorry.
Coursey.
Thank you.
There's so many things that I never hear discussed when meetings like this are going on. Everybody immediately wants to talk about the tremendous amount of revenue that's going to be generated from this kind of business. As a businessman, of course, I'm excited about the revenue, but nobody ever talks about the expenses. We're gonna have this much money coming in. What are going to be the additional expenses for Carl's department? Has anyone done the due diligence to figure that out? Here's why I think the location is absolutely absurd. I live on Hamilton Drive. You're trying, and I'm not going to call it the cannabis dispensary. I'm not going to play the semantics game. I'm gonna call it a weed store. You want to put a weed store in my neighborhood? That is absurd. The other question I'd like to ask the board is, has anyone done the due diligence of the effect on property values within a half a mile of a weed dispensary?
I also would like to know that.
Anybody? Okay, let me answer that. Statistically, homes located within a half a mile of a weed store go down by 5%. Here's another very interesting statistic. When Colorado legalized, they surveyed people that were in favor of legalization, and overwhelmingly, 54% of those people surveyed said they didn't want to live within a mile of it. Now let's think about those two things. Putting a weed store in our neighborhood is not only going to lower the property values, you've also reduced the population of potential home buyers for my neighborhood by more than 50%.
I disagree with that.
I'm sorry?
I disagree with that.
You're certainly free, that's what we're here to do.
If you're gonna lower the property values, you're gonna be lowering their taxes on
Tom,
that too.
it's his time to talk.
Okay, okay.
Google is your friend, sir. All this data is readily,
I've done my work on Google.
all this data is readily available. So I also want to thank you, sir. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Matt Schatz.
For your initiative tonight and making sure that we're literally not going to put this a 9-iron away from where the kids in our neighborhood play. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next one up is there.
Oh, I was gonna.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was.
I have a letter from Valjean Roloff. I am unable to attend the zoning meeting in person on December 21st, 2023, and give permission to a board member to read my statement in its entirety. I support the location of a cannabis dispensary within the village of Grant Park and rezoning said area to accept such a facility. According to Illinois state laws, the operation and distribution of purchased cannabis will be secured. Likewise, contrary to Facebook postings, there will not be any usage of the substance in the facility. Current Illinois law does not permit this. We currently have 3 taverns which allow on-site consumption of alcohol and 2 gas stations that openly sell packaged alcohol. Alcohol as viewed by many in the early 50s as it would be a deterrent to the community. It has not been as with all other drugs. If used wisely, we all want a safe village, and like the Love's truck stop, which many thought would be detriment, it has been a financial gain to the community. Though I will not partake in usage, we should not let this opportunity go to momentous management for Beecher, as the finances will benefit all areas and resources of Grant Park and hopefully lead to a more
Prosperous.
yes, community, sorry. Regards, past village board member, Valjean Roloff. All right, I also have a Linda, did you want to speak now, Linda?
Yeah, my main concern is, I get it, if you get the money in, it would make things better on all our citizens' rate. My concern is Hilbert Court's right there, and we're all from Hilbert Court, and that's already like a major, everybody turns around and goes up and down our street. I don't wanna see more of them, it's already congested, I work from home, and I can count the number of cars on a daily basis that go up and down our street that don't live there or don't visit the road. Basically, there's a way to restrict some of the traffic, keeping it going back into the subdivision, like I said, down to Hamilton, keep it away from the park. I don't think we need all that traffic back there. I think that'd be too much, strain on the residents and stuff and stress and so forth.
Thank you, ma'am. Next one, John Forsythe.
I'm done.
Oh, sorry. Dennis Marks.
First of all, I don't know how many people in here smoke pot, but I have done my share when I was young. And, due to the fact that my job started drug testing, I quit smoking pot because it was either a $30,000 a year job or smoke pot. So the $30,000 a year job went up. I think a lot of people have a negative attitude to pot or marijuana because of all the things when I was a young kid that said you smoke pot, next thing you know, you're shooting heroin in your vein. That's all bullshit. None of that's true. It's no different than a guy who's and turns into an alcoholic. There's so many that's gonna do that. There's so many that are gonna be drug addicts. It's not a given thing that happens. So, in my opinion, we could use the tax money, and I've already heard that Lowe's brought in 80,000, where did that go? We sold our water and our sewer and everything else, so we made money on in this town. So how else are we gonna make money? Without raising taxes. And we're already talking about raising the sales tax. And that's ridiculous. The people that are gonna pay that are the people that live here. We're already paying our taxes. This would be like the fellow said, I've heard a number of people say that coming from Indiana, they'd stop here instead of going to Kankakee. And that put a lot of money in the coffers. And it's not gonna hurt people because if you've ever been in one, I went in one of these stores just to see what it was like. You could get in the vestibule of most of them. I've only been in 2. And they check your ID card to make sure you're 21. So you can't, it's no different than going to a Casey's and buying booze. You gotta check your ID card, same thing. So I see no problem in this, although I see a bunch of people that have a problem with it. But I see absolutely no problem with it.
Thank you, Dennis.
Mr. Palin?
That is smart.
I got you, Dennis.
I'll try to stand up here because I know it's a little bit hard hearing back there. So I'll speak as a soup and then, I'll speak as a resident, someone who lives actually in Duncan Farm as well. So as a superintendent, I've made it known to many of the trustees, my largest objection to this is the proximity to a park. I can't find one in the state of Illinois that is that close to a park, let alone, in the size of our village, and maybe there is. I respect, the security, I totally trust that. I know the chief very well, he has reassured me that security would not be an issue. It's the proximity to the park, Mr. Strauss. I appreciate that, your willingness to consider that, and I hope the trustees do as well. As a resident, I also struggle with the proximity, to a subdivision as well. The reason why I say that is there are some located in the state that I can find that are by subdivisions or residential. But I would ask that if, for those of you making the recommendation of those to the trustees, I've asked this question, would you want it in your backyard? And the answer has been no. So sometimes when conflicts like this present themselves and there's two sides, I believe that you do have to look at, all sides with all lenses. And if you would want this connected to a residential area, and that's what it will be, it does back up on there. So I appreciate your consideration, and I appreciate the value of the viewpoints of everyone tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Pan.
That's all I have on the list, sir. Sorry.
Was there anybody else that wished to speak on behalf of the special use? Yes, sir.
There's been a lot of talk about all this money coming into the community. That's nice. I know there's a lot of young people in here, and they probably do not recall when the state of Illinois says, hey, we're gonna have a lotto. The lotto is gonna take care of the school tax. Right? So rather than pay school taxes, we're gonna have a lotto. And the lotto is gonna take care of that, plus all kinds of other things, right? So some of the people making comments out there says, hey, taxes are gonna be going up, sales taxes are gonna be going up. So wait a minute, I'm confused. The lotto was gonna solve all these problems. Yet Illinois, as I said earlier, is a disaster. Now, that's probably more blamed on the people who keep electing these people in Springfield and Chicago, but that's a different story. So the stuff about this cannabis store is gonna bring in all this money, right? All you're gonna do is say, hey, if the lotto was doing such a great job, how come our taxes are going up, up, and up? Okay, the other thing, there's people here that are for it. There's people here that are against it, okay? So, I would leave you with this. Village board meeting, you said, is January 2nd, okay?
Yes, sir.
So the people here that are against this, you got about 2 weeks to go and collect signatures. And say we're gonna post it. And then drop it on the village board meeting when that village board meeting comes up. And then, keep in mind, there's an election coming up. Right? So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Could I make a suggestion as well? Sir. If Mr. Hub is confident in his $10 million revenue projection, and his plan, once the business is successful in generating that revenue, is to then donate that to the village, and we're all confident about the remarkable amount of tax revenue we're going to get, why don't you build your weed store out by the truck stop, and the village can use all this wonderful tax revenue that's coming in to buy the bank from you?
Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Hi there, my name's Christine Pickens. I just want to, I know I hear a lot about like property taxes and things, but I just want to confirm and ask, is the revenue at all going to help or hinder any of our property taxes?
The tax is on the books, I've got the ordinance here.
Yeah.
It is a separate cannabis specific sales tax.
Okay,
What impact that would have on your property taxes is a decision for the village board. The village board determines what those will be in any given year for the village. Other taxing bodies determine what that will be for them, but this is a separate source of revenue.
so the revenue would go to the village, but not have any direct impact on residents.
It wouldn't, without further action, it wouldn't
Okay.
automatically have an impact.
Okay. And senior citizens can currently apply for a senior citizen exemption for their property taxes. So their taxes would in fact never go up. Correct? Right, senior citizen taxes are frozen. It can't be applied to senior citizens. Right, okay. I'm guessing.
May I ask what that has to do with going?
Well, I believe as Mr. Peterson mentioned that the senior citizens are not doing well in our community because of their taxes.
No, I didn't say that. I said there's poor people that nobody realizes. The high price of food they have to, am I gonna buy food today or am I gonna pay my electric bill? And you got the village and the school district asking for tax increases
Excuse
right
me.
now.
Excuse me, Mr. Peterson, would you come up here so that we can, the owl's what's doing the recording, we can't really hear you.
Oh, yeah, I'm just simply asking questions. Because it seems like there's $10 million in revenue, so someone is going to make upwards of 10, I mean, I realize there's expenses there, but the village will get, let's say, 300,000. So in turn, someone else is making 9 million, all for the benefit of our community. And why? Well, I'm just throwing that out there. I would,
Mr. Peterson,
The way I understand it, that 3% that the board agreed on, that could be raised to 5%. So that'd be another 200,000. And 300 or 200, why do you wanna put that on the backs of the taxpayers that can't afford it to begin with? This is free money for you guys.
So Tom, are you suggesting that the village is gonna pay taxes then, with, this is the revenue stream?
I didn't say that.
I don't even say that, so you suggesting.
There's a 1%. That's gonna be on, the primary, March 19th, which I don't have a problem with. A lot of people are more poor than me and you, and they can't afford it. The 200 or 300,000 will help the people from coming every 2 years and asking for a tax raise. When's it gonna stop?
If I can just wing in for a moment, the gentleman who just spoke, who was that? We need to keep a clear record.
Dr. Phelan.
Oh, that was
I got
Dr.
it.
Okay, thank you.
is there any other individuals wishing to make a comment?
Can I say something?
Oh, yeah, Vella? Yes.
I'm not pro or con against whatever you guys are doing. I'm just telling you, there's a misconception of the traffic concept through here. And even before Love's comes, I've worked 6 years here on midnight. You guys have no clue how much traffic goes through here, through town already. Okay, that's not gonna change traffic one bit. It's not gonna change the amount of cars, people, blah, blah, blah. That ain't gonna change nothing. This is a main route through the state of Illinois. We have all kinds of Chicago people coming through here already, Indiana people coming through here already. That ain't gonna do a damn thing to that traffic. It ain't gonna add to it, ain't gonna subtract to it. You guys have no clue how many cars come through here already. I run radar up and down that road all night long. Correct me if I'm wrong, the gentleman that's trying to apply, who's the officer? State law already states that if you go in there and buy something, you cannot open that in your vehicle. If you do, you're subjecting yourself to me for a DUI, and I am the DUI officer. Love them, and I will get you for it. That's a $500 impound for the car to the city, a DUI arrest, period. I'm not trying to hurt their business. I ain't messing with it. Hope to God I can be part of their security. But I do not tolerate drinking and driving and drugs and driving. I will get those vehicles. If they pull out of there smoking, I'm gonna get them. Okay, we don't tolerate that stuff. If you see anybody that loves it, hangs off, have anybody. We're in there all night long harassing anybody trying to do something stupid. And I'm not saying harass, but we don't allow it there. This PD will not allow that stuff. And again, I'm not pro, I'm not con.
Thank you, James.
Isn't that more money for the village then? You just said the figures.
Oh, you mean like the towing pound?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Check it, the
$500
whole 9 yards. That's more money for the village.
For every car I arrest.
Is there anybody else that wish to speak?
Well, so I just want to give them an opportunity to respond to the stuff that's been voted.
So I think you just heard, about the traffic in the area. I think, Superintendent, is it Phelan? Phelan, P-H-E-L-A-N. All right, I'm sorry about that. So, and Superintendent Phelan said that, Phelan? I wanna get it right. I want to get it right. I want to get it right. Superintendent Phelan, sorry about that. I want to make sure I get it right. He said that the chief secured him that it's not going to be, chief assured him that security is not going to be an issue. That I will note that the property has some very mature trees that are adjacent to the subdivision that are big trees in there, and that'll help. But the property, the subdivision there is next to a couple properties that are zoned C1 and C2. That's where the subdivision is located. And the question was, would you live near a dispensary? Well, that subdivision lives near a gas station that sells alcohol, sells liquor, alcohol, beer, and both are self-contained, but the dispensary is more secure. It's got more on-site security. It's got more cameras. And then we heard about all the revenue impacts. I think Mr. Peterson actually did it pretty eloquently, so I'll reiterate it. But ultimately, the benefits to the community are much greater than the perceived harm. And there's a lot of fear that it's going to reduce property values, but there's no evidence of that. This is going to be a big tax generator for the community and will benefit a lot of other ancillary things as a result. So ancillary things as a result. So Fred, I don't know if you want to say anything else. You're still here, but to close it.
I appreciate everybody's time and their comments. Because I don't know how much longer I'm gonna be here to make the comments. When you get to be 80 years old, you start thinking clearly about your retiring and everything, but I just appreciate everybody in town. And I like disagreement. I mean, everybody's not gonna like you just because you like yourself. But I still think Grant Park should use the boost like with revenue, because I don't even know how we can afford these taxes ourselves. We got a lot of money. We can't afford it. Like everybody said, just spend your money. Well, that's all well and good, but the money's gotta come from somewhere. 45 years, we've seen the taxes, they're worth it. I love schools. I like that superintendent of the school. As far as I'm concerned, I really don't care about Grant Park's taxes. As long as the money is going to schools, that's the number one thing in town. Nobody's gonna tell me about schools. My brother is real rich, but he believes in education. He said you can't spend enough money to cover education. There's no price, you can't put a price on it. That's the future of this whole town and the country, is education. And if this thing does generate money, it could help with some of this expense for people, this ones on fixed income. These farmers that move into town, they're living on a fixed income. You know, that's hard, you know. And they want their grandkids and great grandkids to have good education. That's what we're counting on you to do. But the money's gotta come from somewhere. I don't mind paying my fair share of it. Best money we're spending. School. You take the schools, look on your tax bill, take the schools off of there, see how much your taxes are, they're reasonable. They're reasonable by the trucks now. We'll go build it by the trucks. Right.
So, Mr. Superintendent, I just want to make sure it was clear too. There's going to be no advertising of like cannabis flower or anything like that. It's all subdued, it's not to be targeted to teens, and they will be checking IDs.
All due respect, I understand what you're saying. We've already had 2 inquiries of families that have heard that we're planning on looking at residents here. And now we know for sure one of them is not. So I was speaking on a purely visible, perceptual standpoint. I agree, it would be a nice sign in front, but my point is that when we're trying to recruit families to come here, yes, there will be some that it doesn't matter to at all, but there will be some that it will matter to. And that's my respect, with all due respect.
And our only response to that would be that luckily we have what we think is a well-funded potential operator who will run a first-class secure facility. And that's what we.
I agree with the facility, but I disagree with this perceptual.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. And unless there's anything else, if there's any questions or
Tom?
One of the things that I forgot. The day after I heard about this meeting, I heard that Beecher was looking into one of these wheat stores or whatever you wanna call them. So you guys wanna pay extra taxes, let Beecher have the money, you know? That's what it comes down to, is money, and money talks. And I still don't understand the vote. What you guys already voted on tonight, you changed the zoning, so you can't even vote yes on it.
We did not.
I heard you.
We made a recommendation that goes to the village board, and then the village board can decide.
Oh, you didn't vote on that?
We did on a recommendation that will go to the village board on January 2nd.
For the zoning change?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a recommendation that goes to the village board. Yes, there was a vote with a recommendation made that will go to that January 2nd meeting. Does not mean it's final. It is a recommendation to the village board.
Okay, are you gonna vote on this tonight?
We are.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else before we entertain a discussion amongst the board members? Okay, does anybody on the board have any questions for the applicants? Only one question I would have for clarification is when you referenced Mr. Hub, you said on the applicant of the current license, do they currently hold a license for this type of
They're
operation?
under contract to purchase one. That's not finalized yet. This here tonight and the board meeting on the 2nd will lead to that outcome, hopefully.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on that.
Yes, sir.
Motion to close the public hearing? Hamilton, second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
okay, before the commission does any deliberation, as is prepared, should the recommendation be for approval, we have prepared a template, finding of fact and recommendation of approval that incorporates all of the findings that the village code requires. Obviously, if the plan commission's desires to recommend disapproval, this doesn't address that. That could be prepared after the fact. And what that says is that it should be in front of you. There is a opening paragraph that recites that this hearing was conducted today at this time in this location after due notice was provided. And then it finds that the applicant has made or will make satisfactory provision and arrangement concerning first, ingress and egress to the property and proposed structures and uses thereon, with particular reference to automotive and pedestrian safety and convenience, traffic flow and control and access in case of fire or catastrophe. Second, off-street parking and loading areas where required. Third, refuse and service areas. Fourth, control of noise, glare, odor, and other potentially adverse effects of proposed use on nearby property, and the screening or buffering to alleviate such effects. Fifth, control or drainage and erosion. Sixth, utilities with reference to location availability, potentially adverse appearance, and other effects on surroundings. Seventh, signs and lighting with reference to glare, traffic safety and compatibility, and harmony with adjoining properties and the character of the area. And finally, required yards and other open spaces. Next, there is a finding that the establishment, maintenance, and or operation of the proposed use, which is a cannabis dispensary or weed store, on the subject property will not be detrimental to or endanger public health, safety, morals, comfort, or the general welfare. Next, that the proposed use on the subject property will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. Next, that the establishment of the proposed use on the subject property will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. Next, that granting a special use permit for the proposed use on the subject property will not adversely affect the public interest. And finally, that the applicant's request is fully compliant with all of the village's rules and requirements. And that based on those findings, which again, if the plan commission's pleasure is to modify or remove or change any of those, that is an option as well. Based on that, this would recommend approval subject to the following conditions. That the subject property must comply with all applicable requirements of the C2 commercial district at all times. Second, that the facility must adhere to all cannabis facility standards and regulations set forth in the village code from time to time, including without limitation, Title 9, Chapter 21 of the zoning code, which is the chapter that will be created should the village board adopt the ordinance that was passed on earlier tonight. Third, that the applicant shall not modify any existing signage or install any new signage on the property unless and until a sign permit application has been submitted to and approved by the village in full compliance with the zoning, with the sign code in the zoning ordinance. Next, that the applicant shall not commence work on any interior or exterior building and or development plans or improvements until the applicant has applied for and received any and all required approvals and permits, including without limitation building permits. Next, that in the event that the adult use cannabis dispensing organization, which is the statutory term for a cannabis dispensary, is not fully operational and established within 2 years of the effective date of the special use permit ordinance, the special use permit will lapse and will thereafter be null and void, basically a 2-year shot clock, though it can be extended to 12 months by resolution of the board. Next, that the application shall provide the Grant Park Police Department with access to any and all camera systems on the property and any and all footage captured thereby upon request during normal business hours, and that they will provide the department with copies of all such footage upon request and shall not delete any footage that has been requested and or produced without the department's prior written consent. Next, the applicant shall not permit or allow any illegal activity in the event that the applicant or any officer, director, manager, employee, or other agent of the applicant becomes aware of illegal activity having occurred in, on, or within sight of the subject property, including without limitation any associated parking lot or area at any time, shall be the affirmative responsibility and duty of the applicant and of each such officer, director, manager, employee, and other agent to promptly report the illegal activity to the department via a 911 telephone call if appropriate, answer fully and truthfully all questions of any identified police officer of the village who inquires regarding or otherwise investigates the alleged illegal activity, including without limitation any and all persons or events around, in, and otherwise related, cooperate with any identified police officer during an inquiry or investigation by giving oral and written statements at reasonable times and locations, and sign a complaint against any person if the applicant or any of their officers, directors, managers, employees, or agents observes a person engaging in illegal conduct or activity. That basically just requires full cooperation between the facility and the police. Next, that prior to commencing business operations, the applicant shall commit in writing to install any and all building enhancements, including security cameras, lightings, and other improvements as the village may deem necessary in order to ensure safety. Generally speaking, the applicant is already required to get approval from the Illinois State Police. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
And so that security plan would have, the village would have a chance to look at that as well. And finally, prior to commencing business operations, the applicant shall file an affidavit with the village affirming compliance with all requirements of this title, being the zoning code and the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. If, sorry, that is quite a mouthful. If it is the planning commission's pleasure to recommend approval, understanding that approval would require that, again, the ordinance that was previously passed on be approved by the village board and approved in a state that would allow this facility at this location. We put forward this finding of fact. If there are any modifications to or changes, we just need that to be incorporated into a motion.
So open it up for discussion if there's any questions. No? Do we have a motion, either to approve the document presented and or to deny it?
Motion to deny. Second.
Got a motion by Hamilton to deny the document presented on behalf of the special use permit at 101 North Hilliard Drive, seconded by Sean Lear. Roll call vote.
Yep. Brian, no? Okay.
Well,
Sorry.
roll call. That's a no on the motion to deny. Okay. So what do we have?
3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 1 against.
Okay, so that motion does pass and recommendation will be presented to the village board for decision on January the 2nd. And you still need to do the regular second.
Yes.
Do we have to open a motion for Elizabeth?
No. Okay.
Is there any public comment?
This is the normal Open Meetings Act, 3 minutes, talk about anything you want. Topics discussed tonight or anything else at all. Okay,
Got a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Hamilton, second.
County gas.
All right, all in favor?